Hey friend, welcome back. Welcome to my channel. Super excited to have you here with me today. We have an awesome video called Connection. This is like the foundation of my sleep practice. It's all based on connection. So today's video is going to be very powerful and hopefully set some insight on how we can make connections more intentional in order for them to be fueling for all the parties involved. Now, before we dive in, I would like to invite you to please subscribe to my channel if you are enjoying what you're watching. It helps support me. It will help me reach more people, more families, and that way we can spread the wealth and the information and hopefully help everyone feel more confident and more secure in their parenting, I hope. All right, so let's start with connection. So let's start actually with what connection is not. Connection is not a long period of time. Okay, this is like the natural way that we tend to think about connection. We think, oh, it's going to be great because on Wednesday of the day off, I'll have some time with my children and that will mean that we'll be connected. But I mean, thankfully, that's not really true because if we had to wait for us to have long periods of time to have connection with our children, that would be very difficult for us working parents, for parents who are not necessarily home all the time. And so the good news is that that's not what connection is. Connection is a moment in time. And what we want to do is foster many, many, many moments in time in order to create that sense of connection. Okay, so that moment of connection actually goes through 4 steps. And in this video, we're going to go through what those 4 steps are and how we can embrace those 4 steps in order to make more meaningful connections with our family. So step 1. Step 1 is called intention. And through intention, our connections become more meaningful. Because think about it. How many times have we spent the morning with our families? Let's say on the weekend. We spend all day with our families, but one person's on the phone and the other person's talking to the neighbor, and the kids are just kind of hanging out, playing with each other, and there's not really intention involved in the way that that day is run. But when we understand connection, and when we understand that we have the ability to make an impact, then we can use intention to help fuel those moments of connection. So having intention would look like, I will use a different example here. Let's talk about our meals. I feel hungry, so I have a sensation that comes up inside my body, and I translate that sensation to mean I'm hungry. And then when I'm hungry, I will put intention on preparing myself a meal. So I'm hungry, I feel the sensations come up for me. It kind of pushes me towards wanting to have a connection with food. So the first step before I can connect is the intention. I prepare myself something to eat, okay? And then with that intention, naturally the next step, step 2, is connection. So step 1, intention, I prepare my meal. Step 2, I sit down, I eat my meal. I'm enjoying it. It fuels me. And then at a certain point, my body says, enough, I've had enough. And then I would naturally disconnect from my meal, which is step 3. Now, disconnect is natural. It's also very necessary if we want to continue fueling healthy relationships or healthy connections. So if I disconnect from my meal because all of a sudden my body says, you've had enough, and then it's time to end that meal, that's a very natural, necessary way to disconnect from the connection with my meal. But if I'm not intentional, or I override my need for disconnect, meaning my body is saying to me, I'm full, but I keep eating. Or my body is saying for me, this is not quite sitting right for you, but I keep going. Then I override the need for the disconnect and I get stuck in connection. And we all know this so well, and we all do this all the time in our relationships. Doesn't matter what the relationship is. Could be with food, could be with people. We tend to override the body's the body's truth for a disconnect because it's yummy, so I'll just keep eating. Or you know what, we're just sitting at the table for hours, so I will keep eating. I know this very well. Friday nights, we sit at the table for hours and I always overeat. And every time I say it to myself, I'm overriding my need for a disconnect. But because the setting doesn't allow for me to get up from the table necessarily, I naturally just override my need for a disconnect. And so I'm just noticing. And the idea here is not to become perfect people because that doesn't exist. The idea here is to recognize, to develop self-awareness, and to be able to observe ourselves so that we can act more in line with our intentions the next time. So the need for a disconnect is going to help us stay in line with our intention. It's not something that we need to fear. It's not something that we want to dread. It's just a natural part of connection. We disconnect. We disconnect from our meals. We disconnect in the morning when we say goodbye to our family when they go off to work. That's a natural disconnect. So we know that when we disconnect, it's just a moment because we're going to connect again at the next meal. And actually knowing that we're going to connect again at the next meal is what allows us to be able to disconnect. And this is so important. This is a big takeaway here from this video, is that when we recognize that there will be another moment of connection, we more easily disconnect from the current connection. So if I'm eating my breakfast and I know there's going to be lunch, then when I'm done eating, I can easily disconnect because there's lunch in my bag and I'm just going to have another meal soon. But if I'm having breakfast and I know that I have a long day ahead of me and there won't be an opportunity to eat again for a long time, I maybe without even recognize it, I may tend to overeat in order to hopefully not be hungry soon. So I'm just going to eat some more so that maybe I won't get hungry for lunch because there won't be an opportunity to eat. So we fear the disconnect when we don't know that there's going to be another connection coming up soon. And I feel like this is really where our power lies as parents. When we recognize, first of all, this cycle, right? So we said intention, then connection, then disconnect, and then reflection. How was that meal for me? Was it fueling? Did it feel nice in my stomach? Did I overeat? Does it feel not right because I didn't eat really healthy foods? And so now I have like oiliness coming up in my esophagus and I feel like I have heartburn. And so then I'm like, oh, that was not a good meal. I wouldn't do that next time. So that moment of reflection, even though it may seem trivial, is super important because that becomes information that we pull out from that connection we had in order to be able to make a more intentional connection next time. So if I ate, let's say, something fried and it doesn't sit right with me, when I'm reflecting, I might think, that wasn't good for me. I'm not going to eat oily food next time because it just doesn't make me feel good. And so then I become more intentional in the way that I fuel my next connection with food. So we want to do this with all the relationships that we have. And some relationships are with people, but we have relationships with everything. We have relationships with our sleep. We have a relationship with other human beings. And so we want to be able to use this model of healthy connection in all of our relationships so that all of our relationships become more intentional. And when they are intentional, then we have the ability to be more fueling or more connecting in those relationships. So when we recognize the cycle, we know that we always want to anchor in the connection. So we're going to disconnect from our meal, but don't worry, guys, there's going to be lunch soon. And then we finish lunch and it's okay, we're done eating and we'll meet again for dinner. So we anchor in the next connection and that allows us to disconnect more easily. So think about this when we talk about sleep, because everybody fears the disconnect of sleep. It's so scary. It feels like we're going to disconnect and then that's going to jeopardize the relationship and that's going to maybe create some kind of discomfort around the fact that we have to go to sleep. But sleep is a natural disconnect of our day. The day doesn't go on forever. Nobody thinks the day goes on forever. But somehow we don't recognize that the disconnect and going to sleep is just natural. It's just normal. There's nothing wrong with that. Our children are not going to be traumatized because they need to sleep. It's normal. We sleep. It's actually what allows us to then show up fully for the next connection in the morning. So if we override our need for a disconnect and we stay stuck in connection, like so many of us do, and we all do this, right? We do it with our food or we do it with our kids or we just do this. We tend to have a hard time with disconnect, especially when we don't recognize this natural cycle of the way that things progress. Then we get stuck in connection. And what does stuck in connection look like? So let's say that I'm going to put my child to sleep now, and my child doesn't necessarily know how to fall asleep on their own yet. So when I put them down in their bed, I get nervous because I can't disconnect now. That's very scary. So I'm just going to sit here. I'll just sit here. I'll bring a chair. I'll sit here. And then, I'll sit and I'll wait until my child falls asleep. Okay. So now we are stuck in connection because we are sitting there. And we don't know how long we're going to sit there. And now all of a sudden I'm going to leave now, or, this encounter has come to an end, which is very natural, gets overridden and we get stuck. And so I'm stuck sitting there. Now, how long am I stuck sitting here? I'm actually at the mercy of when my child falls asleep. So I might be stuck here for 2 minutes, but then some days I might be stuck here for an hour. And then when I'm stuck here for an hour, my shoulder hurts and my back, and it's just uncomfortable. And I'm like, when is this going to end? I have dishes to do. I wanted to sit with my husband. We were going to have a glass of wine tonight. We wanted to spend some time together. There was a show I wanted to watch on Netflix, or I wanted to go to a yoga class. Or all of a sudden, there's no me because I'm stuck in connection. And I guess really what's most important here is the word stuck. You are stuck in connection, because if the connection is intentional, then you want to be in connection. But when the connection goes bad, because you don't dare to disconnect, you get stuck in connection. And that allows your body, or that creates a situation where your body starts speaking its truth. And it starts telling you there are these sensations of discomfort. Your shoulder hurts, your back hurts, you're starting to get irritable, you can't sit anymore, you're fidgety, you want to get up. That's your body saying, warning, 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 time to disconnect. But you override it because your mind and your body are in dissonance. Your mind is like, no, I can't get up now. I need to keep sitting here. I need to sit here until my child falls asleep. And so then all of a sudden, we are no longer acting with intention. We are stuck in connection. And you will know that you're stuck in connection because, one, it's not intentional. And two, your body starts speaking its truth, telling you you need to disconnect. You just don't dare to disconnect. The purpose of today's video is to shed some light on what connection looks like when it's intentional and when it's healthy, and what it looks like when it's unhealthy. And to be able to take that information and shed some light on what's going on for us in our home. How are we going about our connections? Are those moments of connection intentional? Are we capable of disconnecting when that connection has naturally come to an end? Or do we feel stuck, or do we feel scared? And that means that then we kind of, get stuck, feel resentful, have sensations coming up for us in our bodies, tell our bodies that, no, we need to be stuck here. It needs to happen. Our child doesn't know how to fall asleep, so let's not dare to leave. And that's where the connection goes bad. So remember the 4 steps. Again, I'm going to go over them really quickly. We have intention. I want to connect. Okay. I want to connect with my child. So let's take bedtime routine as an example. It's almost time for disconnect. It's almost time for bedtime. So I want to connect with my child before we disconnect. And that is also super important. We connect with our children, especially before and after times of separation. So sleep is a natural separation. We all separate. We actually all separate from our world, from our lives, where we retreat into the slumber that allows us to refuel our bodies so that we can show up in the morning on a full tank. So before my child goes to sleep, as a parent, I know this is going to be a time of separation. I'm definitely going to put intention on creating a connection there before the separation. So we do a bedtime routine. And now bedtime routine, there's a whole video on bedtime routine, and there's an entire bundle in my sleep course. You guys can check that out. There's a link below. But here we'll go over it briefly. The bedtime routine becomes an opportunity for connection. So it's not a sequence of events. I'm not talking about like we came home, we had dinner, we went upstairs, we had bath time, we got dressed. That's not bedtime routine. Bedtime routine is an opportunity for connection. So that would mean we're ready for bed, we're in the bedroom, and now we have an opportunity to connect. That's the bedtime routine. So with a very young child, it might look like 3 to 5 minutes of, we're holding like I'm holding you, we're looking out the window, we're saying goodbye to everybody, we're talking about maybe what's going to happen tomorrow, I sing you a song, we connect on an emotional level, and then from there, we're going to say goodnight and I put you to bed, and I feel comfortable ending the connection because it feels natural, because you're relaxed, because the next natural step is we're going to sleep now. If it's with an older child, you can definitely savor that connection because your child will naturally have more stamina. So you may be, with a 3-year-old, you may be doing a bedtime routine that takes 20 to 30 minutes. And that's yummy. That's wonderful. You read 3 books and your child's sitting on your lap and you're talking about what's going on in the book and you're having an engaging conversation and maybe even laughing a bit. And so there's a nice, longer opportunity for a moment of connection before the separation. But then when we're done with our books and we've talked about what happened today and what's going to be tomorrow, it's natural that your child climbs into bed and maybe you sing a song or stroke their hair for a little bit and then say goodnight, and then you would walk out. And that's the natural disconnect. And then from there, by the way, don't forget step 4, which is reflection. So when I put my younger child in bed, or when I put my 3-year-old in their bed, how was that connection moment before we separated? Maybe I feel like 3 books is too much. It just dragged on and on and on. It got out of hand. It was not good. Or maybe I feel like, wow, that was spot on. I would do it exactly the same tomorrow. And with your younger child, you might notice he doesn't have the patience for me singing him songs before he goes to sleep. He's so tired. He just wants to be in bed already. So if your child is not enjoying the routine, that's like a bit of information that you understand in hindsight, of course, that, okay, I need to cut it. It was too long. Or I can add something. It wasn't long enough. Or I would do it the same next time. It was perfect. And that's how we can use the connection dynamic to help us make more intentional connections. So I hope that this sheds some light on how things go for you. Are you intentional in your moments of connection? Are you just expecting things to be connected because we're just in close proximity? So that means it should be enough, because it's not enough. And we know that now. We want intention, and then we want to savor our connections, and then we want to be able to disconnect with intention because it's natural, because it's time, because it's necessary. And we're not worried because we're going to meet up again in the morning. So part of, for example, I have my youngest right now is 9.5. I still do bedtime routine with him. And at the end of every bedtime routine, I'm literally in his bed and we're hugging and I'm like, massaging his back a little bit. And when we're done and I say to him, Daniel, I'm going to get up now, then he'll always say to me, Mommy, can you stay some more? And I always say to him, don't forget what's tomorrow morning. We're going to connect in the morning routine. You're going to come to my bed and we're going to cuddle. We're going to kiss. We're going to hug. Or I'll come to your bed and wake you up and we'll do the same. But that's the anchor. We anchor in the connection that's going to come about next time. So we can disconnect from our meals because there's another meal. We can disconnect from the day because there's a morning connection. And we can drop off our kids in daycare because we're going to come pick them up. So we always do this without even recognizing it. We anchor in the next connection. And I suggest that becomes your go-to. We want to anchor in the next connection so that our kids feel comfortable disconnecting because they're already holding on to that next moment that we're going to have together. Guys, another thing that I want to point out that's very, very important, sometimes we don't recognize this, but we have a lot of power as parents. We have so much power as parents. Now, I'm not talking power in the sense like power. I'm saying we lead the way. We are the role models. Our kids are looking up to us. They're like little radars, like I always like to say. They're watching us. So what are they watching? What are they observing? How can mom disconnect? Is it hard for her? Is it natural? Is it something that just happens? Or is it like she's cringing, she's nervous, she's hesitant and can't do it? Think about that. I always think about the fact that I'm on stage when I'm with my kids. They are watching me. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter what we're doing. They're constantly observing me. They see how I go about my life. And so they notice how I disconnect. And they're watching that. So how do I disconnect? Do I disconnect with ease? When my child's having a hard time disconnecting, do I show stability? Do I show confidence? Do I show this is just natural, guys. It's like the end of the meal. And sometimes that happens around mealtime too, where I say, guys, I think it's been enough. It's time to disconnect from our meals. We're going to connect again. We don't need this to linger forever and always. And so recognizing that you have center stage, you are the role model. Your children are watching you all the time. And so it's important to show them that you can disconnect with ease. If you need to, you just come back. I'm not saying we disconnect and that's always and forever until the morning. Many, many times with kids, we show up. We have to show up again. So I said good night. I walked out, but then Mom, so then I come back. Okay, that's fine. but we're not afraid of disconnect. And I think that that's really, really important to recognize, that you are in the lead. You are really showing how we disconnect. You are teaching them how you disconnect by being in the lead around being able to disconnect from meals, being able to disconnect from interactions. When you drop your child off in daycare, you drop them off, you say, goodbye, sweetie, I'll see you after nap time, or I'll see you after snack time, and then you leave. And you don't linger there like, wait, should I leave? Should I not leave? Wait, hold on, let me take him back for a little bit. He's not really having this disconnect moment, easily. Let me give him another hug. Then that creates chaos. So putting the focus on how you show up and being the role model in how you disconnect gives a wealth of information to your child about how you perceive disconnect, that it's natural, that it's normal, that it's necessary. So I hope this was insightful. If you liked what you saw, please please subscribe. It would mean the world to me. You can also share the video with anyone else who has children who could benefit from this. And if your child is still having a hard time at night, I suggest you grab my free guide, The 3 Main Reasons Why Your Child is Still Not Sleeping Through the Night. It's free. It's on my website. You can just grab it and start putting focus on the pointers that will help you get moving with your child's sleep and your entire family dynamic. So thank you again, and I will see you in the next video.